Charl Kruger, welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You have walked an incredibly long, some would say arduous journey with a person before the band, a man by the name of Drukkie Botha. Otherwise, I think on his ID it would probably say something like Friedrich.
Yeah.
But Drukkie Botha and his sister Linky and Bunty and Oliver formed a band, and you can fill in the gaps here. I can't remember the exact year, but for 2 years, to all intents and purposes, the gathering kind of changed the face of what one would expect out of the northern parts of Pretoria at the height of apartheid, just for context. And you hooked up with this young guy, you were young too, and they formed a band. But you were friends with Drukkie before the band was formed. So what I want from you is tell me, how did you meet him? How did you support him? And how did you become so integral in what was the gathering and later the Outsiders?
I take you back to the year 1981.
Yeah.
Yeah. um, yeah, I met Drux in August of 1981 by accident. And in one sentence, it totally changed my life. Just meeting him. He's like a brother to me. Love him to bits. We've known each other for so long. But yeah, so we met up 1981, became friends, went to his house.
Met his mom.
Yeah, that's a different story. That's another conversation. And from that very first day that I met him, and he exposed me to new music. It literally, that emoji with the mind that's blown. That's what happened in 1981.
Okay.
It was the right person at the right time. I'll never forget that first day. He couldn't wait to get my view on Ultravox.
Yeah.
And not just Vienna, the John Fox Ultravox.
The early stuff, yeah, yes, the proper stuff, some might argue.
Yes, yeah. And Spandau Ballet. So yeah, so my sort of entry was that, like, all the new romantic stuff. But yeah, the point is, that's when I met Drux, and we became best of friends, and we've been best friends ever since.
Let's not count them. Let's
I always have to, when you have to start doing maths and look at
it's more like 40 years. It's more like 40 years, right?
It's a lifetime. It's easy to measure now, because all those albums that were sort of mind-blowing are now being re-released in box sets and, very expensive.
Well, we're not doing expensive, but we're kind of guilty of the same thing, right? Because if you fast forward a couple of years,
exactly,
when you met him, you were a teenager.
Yeah.
Right. So you hung out, you shared this love for music, and then Drukkie forms a band, and then you weirdly become the fifth member of that band, and you've always been weirdly the fifth member or the fourth member, depending on what iteration of the band.
Just pump the brakes. we have to backtrack a bit.
Sorry.
The band was formed. A band was formed in 1982, 83.
Okay.
I was super keen. Everybody got like into instruments, and yeah, and the thing is, you know, the problem with Drix is that he can make music on any instrument, which is really irritating. He's just got that knack to do that. So I have to admit, right here at the beginning of this little conversation, that I am officially the world's worst drummer.
That's good that you know that. It's good that you know that.
I'm like super crap.
So just stop.
Anyway,
just stop. Yeah. Okay.
So I was in this band. I played the drums, menacingly bad. And then eventually, as school came to an end, the band sort of came to a conclusion. By that time, we both knew where our paths were going. I knew that I wanted to become a designer. Drix knew that he wanted to be a musician. When I told him that, love him to bits, but I am not going to be part of any part of his band. I will be on the fringes.
Yeah.
Doing design, doing whatever he needs.
Yeah.
I think he was really, really thankful for that. Because I think he was a little worried that I would want to pursue this
he loved you so much, and he would have given you that. Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm the guy that gets kicked out of the drumming circle at a yeah. And it's just for fun. No, I'm really bad. But anyway, yeah. So that's
pick another instrument. Just pick another instrument.
Yeah. No, just no.
Yeah, stick to your knitting.
I can listen to the music, but that's it. No, so I even have a tape here where I actually sing a song.
We all sang a song. We were all put on stage. We were all made to sing Pale Blue Eyes. We know the drill, right? So
but anyway, so there was a natural progression where, you know, where as we discovered ourselves and we knew where our paths were leading in life, you know, it's because we were such great friends. It was just a natural progression from going into, and then when he became serious about the music, you know, that's when he that's when it sort of, you know, just clicked even better. So that's where it all started. It started with another band with all kinds of history, and then we you know, we got into the gathering.
Into the gathering, yeah. And so, well, I think it's clear what your motivation was, but if you have to look back at kind of well, we know how you got together, we know how you, well, maybe just unpack the contribution, because as you say, your focus was around the creative component. So
I think, you know, but when, you know, in those days, when you start a band, and, you know, it's all good and well, there are instruments and it's, you know, all of that basic stuff, but I'll never forget the very first gig the Gathering played was outside Pretoria on some small holding, and friends and family were invited, and and
I know that story well.
And my girlfriend at the time was actually was so irritated with me because there was none of this, none of the glamour stuff. Because on that evening, well, early in that day already, it was um, hiring of smoke machines, and just to I assume that Sisters of Mercy got their whole smoke machine vibe from seeing some of that footage from what we did, because that smoke machine ad was like this old school thing. It's like liquid, and you have to
Yeah,
pump
yeah,
it,
yeah,
and
with
yeah.
the
So I
dry.
had to. So from that whole day was just spent preparing and um, stealing literally all my dad's extension leads and just to hook everything up. And then when it was all there, then I had to take the photographs and do the smoke machine and make sure sound was right, and so I was like just this I was like a super roadie.
You were,
um
yeah. On top of creating all the visual.
yeah, but it was, at the end of the day, it's those things that are just so super cool to think back, where things started and what you had to do. So yeah, it was so I think there I kind of knew where my the contribution is not just for a little bit of creative stuff. The contribution was much more vast than that.
Well, it was a marriage. It was, weirdly, you could call it, in my mind, it's a marriage, because, as you say, as much as you were responsible for ultimately the identity, or projecting and promoting the identity of what the gathering was, you were throwing feathers, from suspended above a live gig, and you did you did
Yeah,
whatever was necessary on the night. And then when you weren't
yeah,
that, you were busy designing album sleeves and creating great visual elements, but you were kind of married to the band.
yeah, yeah. I think it was, but and it um, there was no preconceivedness about it. It was just a natural thing that happened
Yeah,
because we were such
organic.
great friends. It was just this collaboration of friends that just carried on and on and on. Yeah, and that at Thunderdome throwing stuff from the rose petals, and oh man,
I was
yeah,
there. I was there. Yeah, weirdly, on the floor, sitting on the floor, watching this gig, not knowing who this band was. And fast forward nearly 10 years, that was when I first met Tricky. But it's,
okay,
but I think, yeah, I mean, I think your contribution is understated, and I think by so many people not understood, that, as you say, it wasn't a question of um, you had no scope of work, right? It wasn't like, okay, well,
mm,
Charl will do that, Tricky will do that, Oliver will do
yeah,
that, Bunty does that. It was, okay, what do we need to do? How many extension leads do we need to get?
yeah,
Um, but the thing that still boggles my mind is that at the time that all of this was happening, never mind in the world, but that all of this was emanating, again, from the northern parts of the most conservative city, at the southern tip of Africa, that no one understood quite what it
mm,
was that you were doing. You and the band had a full understanding of your intentions, but it was almost like you were speaking a foreign language. Um,
very much, very
you
much. Oh hell yes, yeah,
know,
yeah. No, you know, I think we were sort of prepared for that, over the years at school, and because of the way what music we listened to, the way we dressed, what we did, how we did it. Um, but yeah, it's always, and I do not want to sound cliched, but it's almost like this outsider, if you know what I mean,
touche.
kind of vibe.
Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, so it was not something that was really seen and heard and experienced in Pretoria at the time. It, you know,
or
yeah,
anywhere in South Africa at the time, I think. And that was the
yeah. I think we just had, um, we just had uh, big visual dreams. Apart from the music, you know,
yeah.
I'm looking at it selfishly from my point of view, but yeah, it was um, exciting as it was kind of, and once again, not, you know, it was groundbreaking because there wasn't anything like that.
Yeah. But
Um,
but were you aware that it was that? Did you have any sense that what the gathering was doing, what you were doing in, playing your part, that because as you said, none of it was intentional. Well, it wasn't, there was intent, but you were just you were following your creative, I don't know.
yeah, I think it was just that we all, in our different ways, felt and knew that, you know, it was just the right thing. It just felt right. And and I'm talking from a creative point of view, even, you know, from music wise and all the other stuff. But it just felt like it was the right thing to do. It felt good. Um, we I think we never ever sat and thought, you know, we have to stand back for anybody else in the
Hmm,
world.
hmm,
Um, you know, and inevitably you measure yourself against what's happening in the UK at the time, and
hmm.
but you know, they were in a totally different world,
Yeah,
and things that were available to them,
exactly.
and the lack of restriction that they had. You know,
Yeah.
they'd gone through punk.
Hmm,
You know, so those barriers were broken.
hmm.
They just, at that time, that the first 5 years of the 80s was just like, man, it was,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was
So
insane.
they had gone through the barrier.
Yeah.
We were trying without wanting to, but we wanted to create something awesome in South Africa
It was something
because,
original, but
yes,
informed by, yes, the rest of the world. But I think, if I have to kind of sum it up, it's weirdly, it was as though you were trying to translate what was happening in the UK, what was happening even, on the east coast of America, and saying, okay, well, how do you, because we were always very good at marrying what was happening in the US and the UK, and then finding something weird in the middle. And if
yeah,
you think about so many of the bands that we were following at the time, so many of them in their latter years all went off to America, you know, and
yes,
and are still based there today. But the point being is that you weren't looking to replicate, you weren't looking to well, copy what was happening. You were taking your own South African reality and then putting it into something that was not from here. And you created an identity that no one at the time, I think, yes, of course, we had the followers, but it was nobody quite understood, but why they loved it as much as they did. And I suppose, the same applies to you, is that if I have to ask you, what was it about it all that you loved? You probably can't tell me, but you just knew that you loved it,
yeah,
that it felt right, you know.
yes.
But moving on to, how does someone like you, as a creative and as somebody who was looking to present what you heard and what you saw, and then to paint a picture of what you were hearing, what you were seeing, to be able to create a visual identity that was respectful of everything that you everything that you were experiencing at the time.
I think the the dilemma was that because we knew where to look, even at that time in South Africa, we were exposed to a lot of stuff that other people were not exposed to. And it was, I think, one of the big reasons is that they just didn't know where to look, and they didn't know, so the challenge was, you have all of this stuff that you're exposed to at that time of your life. And now you have to sort of filter out, and you want to come up with your own ideas and your own stuff. So and some stuff happened by accident. The talking about literally the painting that's
which just for context, sorry if I may, is that painting, which is in the end the album that we are currently looking to manufacture, that piece of artwork which you created, obviously, painted, sat in the band room, and I didn't realize that it goes back all of that time. I thought it was something that you had created more recently in response to what we were doing. Yet that painting, and if we had to auction it at Sotheby's, it could probably earn you a pretty fortune. That original artwork, which I'm taking is probably oil on canvas, still exists. Hopefully you still own it. But that goes back circa 1985.
It's hanging in my house. It's actually dated 1987.
87. Amazing.
So and like I say, it happened by, originally I painted something else on that piece of canvas, and it was just one of those things that you look at and it's just crap.
Like you're drumming.
Worse. It was, maybe I should. It was just junk. So in fury, in artistic fury, I just poured paint all over it. And then I'm going through a whole process here. I stuck a T-shirt. I literally put a T-shirt on the wet paint, and I pulled it off. And then it's one of those weird things, because the painting represents like this rib cage.
Yes.
That was translated into the logo of the band.
Yes.
And I took the paint and I started pouring it, and it, one of those things that it just happened.
It just ran.
And at the end of the day, it was all there, and it was, this is so cool. This looks, and and then eventually, because Drix loved it, and so it hung in the band room, and it was just sort of there, and
it has all of the music, all of the rehearsals, somewhere in the fabric of that canvas. That music.
I think with the right seance and incantation, the canvas will hum.
Charl, dude, we could talk for days, and we won't. Because I think there may be another one of these sessions that we may do in the remaining 10 weeks that we have left on our campaign. And I think it would be foolish of us not to do this again, because I think you've only literally lifted the lid, and I want to know what's inside the can. But thank you for regaling the tales that you have so far. And let us get to our golden number, which is, say, 170 copies. We've sold 30 odd already. We've only been in our campaign for 3 weeks. So I do think, we have love from all over the world, which is amazing. And I think there are future conversations to be had of stories that many of the people who will listen and watch this will cherish and enjoy. And so thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
That's a pleasure.